Autism is the fastest rising developmental disorder in the world. It affects children throughout industrialized countries. But immigrants from many non-industrialized countries are being hit even harder.
This is Ali, he's 13 years old, he's autistic. This is Afshir, he's 12 years old, he's autistic.
In Somali communities in Sweden and the United States, rates of autism are up to 4 times higher than non-Somalis. Here in Toronto's Somali community, autism rates are also inexplicably high.
This is my brother. He's autistic.
Why Somalis and other immigrants are so badly affected by autism is a mystery. But it's not only them. Autism is rising sharply everywhere. And so far, medicine can't tell us why.
What we were told was, we have no explanation. Things like this just happen.
Autism's rapid rise, especially among new immigrants, is a clue pointing to environmental causes. Now, some scientists are zeroing in on bacteria in the gut as a key to what's traditionally considered a disorder only of the brain.
The traditional way of looking at autism as a specific brain insult that is largely permanent and unreversible may be somewhat outdated.
Right now, all that most doctors will recommend for this puzzling disorder are behavioral therapies like this.
It's a toy. We're playing with the toy. This is how we play with the toy.
Autism is a spectrum disorder, so you can be a little bit or a lot autistic. There's no typical case and no prescription for handling it. 50 years ago, autism was considered rare, affecting only 1 in 10,000 children. Now, rates around the world range from 1 in 147 in parts of Europe to a shocking 1 in 38 in South Korea. The rate in North America is 1 in 90 children.
If you continue this up, then eventually, about 25 to 30 years' time, you get autism as the norm in an American family rather than a rarity.
The outlook might be even more bleak for children of immigrants. Studies in Europe have found higher rates of the disorder amongst children of immigrants from Africa, the Caribbean, and Asia. So much so that Somalis have begun to call autism the Western disease. Researchers are wondering what it is about their new environment that seems to trigger this disorder.
Hi, baby. How are you? Say hi. Say hi. Okay, let's go home.
Adar Hassan lives in Toronto. She has 4 children. 2 of them, Abshir and Ali, are autistic. They both started out as normal babies.
The first year of his life, I would say, was as normal as you can be, even more normal than my 2 previous children.
Touch our floor.
But suddenly something happened.
Press 2 more floors.
It all started after Ali was treated for recurring ear and chest infections with multiple courses of antibiotics.
He started, refusing coming near me. He started crying all the time and going under the table, things like that. He began walking his toes and refusing to eat food, just want to drink, cow milk. He was having a diarrhea, 10, 15 times a day. And his eyes, it's not even there, it's like another world. And no one helping, going this doctor after another doctor and after another doctor. How many doctors I've been when I was struggling with Ali's condition? No one helps.
You want to go outside or you want to play?
70% of children with autism also have gastrointestinal symptoms, and the severity of their gut problems is highly associated with the severity of their autistic behavior.
You want to feed Cookie Master?
Like many parents, Adar noticed her boys only wanted to eat carbohydrates and dairy, and she found that limiting those foods made a big difference.
We adopted the Western diet, but When my kids got diagnosed and did a lot of research, I find out, you know, all the ways, always better, you know, old-fashioned way, you know. Cooking, you know, from scratch, doing as fresh as you can, you know.
Abshir and Ali have fewer health problems now, and they focus better and are less hyperactive. But Ali is completely nonverbal, and both boys still need constant care.
Juice, yum. Hey, easy. All the new immigrants is facing the same thing, and even the Canadian, you know, they're having the same issue and same problem. But something really needs to be explored because these kids really, they're really sick.
Adar's search for answers brought her and her friend Idman here, where desperate parents are looking for anything that might help. The annual Autism One conference in Chicago is the largest and most comprehensive of its kind. Here, scientists and parents alike come to get the latest trends in scientific research and sometimes unconventional treatments.
We're New Beginnings Nutritionals. We're a supplement company, and we're highly
with New Life Foods. We offer gluten-free, casein-free, and soy-free. The essential fatty acids improves brain function for children with autism.
Hi, this is Isaac. He's a robot.
Hi, I'm Amy
we are
from
here
Living
from
Well, designed by Amy.
Hi, we're standing in front of some hyperbaric oxygen chambers.
If you're not satisfied with it, I will personally, as owner of the company, refund your money.
There is a revolutionary new product that has come out on the market that is a
GPS real-time tracking device for children with autism. Check us out at www.
With no official medical protocol for treatment, parents are frustrated with the lack of options.
As parents, we want to use science-based treatments and therapies, but there's a certain sense that we can't wait for science to catch up.
The term autism was first coined in the 40s and was thought to be the byproduct of cold, detached mothering. And so the term refrigerator mother was born, and with it a heartbreaking trend in blaming the mother that would last for decades. From there, the culprits have been everything from nerdy parents to pollution, to television watching and food allergies. As statistics on the disorder have grown, so have theories.
Mr. Wakefield, thank you very much indeed for...
The most contentious of these has been the suggestion that childhood vaccines are causing autism. Andrew Wakefield's 1998 study, published in a prestigious medical journal, launched a 13-year avalanche of controversy throughout the world. Even after Wakefield's methods were discredited, vaccination rates suffered a steep decline.
No regrets, Dr. Wakefield.
No regrets, thank you.
Study after study has found no connection to autism, but vaccine theories, and Dr. Wakefield himself, still have followers.
Okay. I'm a big fan.
Lately, the majority of the research funding has been invested in work on the link between genes and autism. Dr. Stephen Scherer heads the Autism Genome Project at Toronto's Sick Kids Hospital, part of an international consortium of researchers. They're projecting that over 100 genes may contribute to autism, and so far they've identified 6.
The goal of our research is to find which genes are leading to the development of autism, and so when we make a discovery and we find a gene involved, that starts to explain part of this medical mystery. But it doesn't tell us specifically why that gene has been changed or mutated. We also know through other studies that environmental agents can lead to increased rates of genetic changes. So certainly that's a possibility. We can do those experiments once we know what the target genes are, because we can test in the laboratory which environmental agents have effect on how those genes are replicated or turned on or turned off.
Back at the Autism One conference, Dr. Derek McFabe is just beginning to attract attention with a new idea that ties environmental factors together. He thinks the gastrointestinal problems of many autistic children are a major clue. His unorthodox message is gaining ground in the scientific community and speaks to the experience of parents.
Thank you very much. You have a huge bacterial population in your gut, and when you eat, you feed them. And what they produce has profound effects on behavior. When you really look at the research, Infection and gastrointestinal infection and antibiotic use seems to be one of the underappreciated but rapidly emerging causes possibly for triggering or worsening this disorder.
Get propionic acid out of the brain.
This is our hypothesis. So by not eating carbohydrates, it may be a reduction in feeding these bugs to make it.
Also at Autism One is Dr. Martha Herbert. She's a Harvard professor and pediatric neurologist who specializes in autism and how conditions in the body affect the brain. She also sees autism's connection to gut bacteria.
The gut microbial area is exploding before our very eyes right now. It's becoming clear in more and more publications that gut bugs affect the brain, that gut bugs affect psychiatric conditions, and that there's a mind-brain-body continuum through the gut microbiome. And so I think it's more plausible than we ever could have imagined that gut bugs may profoundly affect brain function and behavior, including for autism.
So this may be one of the reasons that particular diets that seem to be...
The gut bacteria theory reinforces what Adar has seen in her son's responses to different diets and in her community's high incidence of autism.
It doesn't surprise me to hear that if you shift a population from Africa to America or Canada, that you get a shift in disease profile, and that would include autism, potentially.
Dr. Jeremy Nicholson and his colleagues at London's Imperial College have been looking at intestinal flora and their role in health for years. Metabolites, which are the products of the processes of the human body, reveal a great deal about how an individual's body is working. One of the easiest ways to study metabolites is by looking at urine.
So there are thousands of different metabolites in urine, and all have got their own unique radio signatures. So what we do is we drop a sample like this, it's got about 0.5 ml of urine, into a very strong magnet. It realigns all the magnetic nuclei, and we can pump in radio waves and then listen to each molecule basically sing its own frequency.
Dr. Nicholson became interested in the mystery of autism a few years ago and launched a large-scale study of urine from autistic children, their non-autistic siblings, and healthy, unrelated children.
Matt, hi. Hello. How is it going?
So we say we have some more tweaking to do, just of the hardware, really.
So, I've had a good idea for a change.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
The question was there anything about autism that made it different to normal? And so we profiled a number of children. We found they're actually quite different in many different respects. One of the most interesting being that they have significant differences in gut microbial metabolite profiles, implying that the gut microbes inside them were working somehow in a different way to normal children.
Dr. Nicholson has found that diseases have changed in the Western world in the last 60 years, and that increased rates of certain disorders, like autism, correspond to a country's level of industrial development.
Since the Second World War, we really entered the modern age of technology, and with that has brought us the blessing of McDonald's and all the other things like that, and all the highly processed foods. It's also brought us antibiotics.
About 2/3 to 3/4 of American antibiotic production is used in livestock. They are not designed to eat grain, they're designed to eat grass. And the grain, basically, to put it crudely, gives them acid indigestion, which you kill off with the antibiotics. And then the antibiotic affects them, gets into the water supply. We started using a lot of pesticides and chemical fertilizers. We've used a lot more corn, which has omega-6 fatty acids, but not omega-3. We use a lot more refined foods and processed foods, which don't have as many nutrients as they did in their fresh forms. So I think that there's a relationship between food policy and vulnerability to autism.
So we've changed more phenotypically, more in terms of our biological signatures, our biological makeup, and our lifestyle in the last 50 odd years or so than we have probably over all our time since the Ice Age. Right, that's a giant change in our biology, so it's bound to have a whole series of consequences. And one of the consequences, we think, is that the microbes, the fundamental activity of the microbes and the composition of the gut microbes has changed.
Norwegian microbiologist Tor Midtvedt has pioneered research into how gut microbes influence health and early development. In fact, Scandinavian researchers have been leaders in finding critical links between the gut and the brain. And now, finally, their ideas are starting to catch on.
And now the focus is in the GI tract, and I'm very pleased with that. It should have been done decades ago.
In his work at the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, he's been studying gut microbes for the past 40 years. He's found that, put together, they make up the most biochemically active organ in the body.
Well, if you take the size of the cell, your cells are at least 100 times greater than any microbes that are within you. But if you take the number, then it is the other way around. The microbes, and most part is in your gastrointestinal tract, are outnumbering you with at least 1 to 100.
As soon as we are born, trillions of bacteria in our guts begin to form. This is called the human microbiome, and it's one of the densest microbial communities on Earth.
And when they are established, then you have a long-term effect of establishment. For each of them can switch on and off genes in your cells, and each of them may produce or may not produce some of the compounds that will act upon you.
One of the keys to normal development is acquiring the right microbes during critical windows of childhood growth.
So if, for instance, a child were to acquire an abnormal set of microbes, or let's say a hostile set, it is possible that the metabolic development of the child is impaired, and that could include brain development. The important thing to remember in this context is that the development of your microbes from the time you're born, it takes about 3 years to get a sort of adult set of microbes. That's exactly the time course over which synaptic development occurs in the brain. You're making all your brain connections. They're pretty much completed by the age of 3.
A disturbance in this early microbe establishment might explain some kinds of regressive autism. This devastating phenomenon is when a child develops normally for up to 3 years and then inexplicably retreats into their own world. Just outside Chicago, this sudden regression became a clue that led one mother to push for answers and a new discovery.
This is Andy at 1 year old. Oops. He had perfectly normal development, hitting all of his milestones. Mama, Dada, Baba, bye-bye, by, the age of 1.
Andrew is the youngest of Ellen Bolte's 4 children. He was born in 1992.
This is his 18-month shot. And this is where he's gone.
A medical checkup found fluid in Andy's ears. The physician diagnosed an ear infection and prescribed 10 days of antibiotics. But the fluid persisted, so the doctor prescribed more antibiotics.
He was on his 6th course of antibiotics within a 2.5, 3 month period. I guess the only way I can describe it is he started to shut down. He became withdrawn. He didn't want to be touched. He didn't want to be held.
Eventually, they found that a milk intolerance explained the fluid in Andy's ears. He was taken off antibiotics, but his behavior remained.
He regressed so dramatically that instantly he was seen by many specialists. Ultimately, though, what we were told was, we have no explanation. Things like this just happen. He has autism. He has very severe autism. At this point, Andrew's 4 years and 9 months old. He didn't like to really play with toys. He would pull the books off the bookshelves or VCR tapes off and just play with them on the floor.